When we're in this little old country town, there was this priest, and anyway, he'd taken confessionals, and the bloke would come in there and he said, Father, Father, I have sinned. He said, what have you done, my son? He said, I've had an affair with Fanny Green. I said, oh, all right, mate. Well, forgive you, mate. They put $20 in the call box, mate, on your way, So many Hail Marys. Anyway, about another quarter hour later, the other bloke came and said, oh, Father, Father. He said, I have sinned. I've had an affair with Fanny Green. Oh, that's good. I said, there must be a new girl in town. I must look out for it in the congregation on Sunday, So anyway, they said that's $20 to the fellow and sent him on his way with so many Hail Marys. On the Sunday, he's there, and Morton, he's the older boy. He's walking around lighting all the candles and getting the money off the people and feeding them the grog and biscuits and that. Anyway, when he come up there, he's doing a sermon, and all of a sudden this woman appeared at the entrance of the church. And he looked across, and there she was. She got a beautiful see-through dress, everything, He said, that must be the new girl in town. He said, excuse me, Morton, get here. I said, yeah, mate. He said, is that Fanny Green? He looked over, he said, no, boss. He said, I think it's just a reflection off the window. Yeah, I remember years ago, Morton, he was walking past a butcher shop, and he'd been drinking, and he looked in the window and he saw all those sausages, I wonder what they are. So he walked into the butcher shop and said, hey, mate, what those legless lizards you got lying in the window there, mate? He said, oh, well, that's what the white man called the sausages. He said, really? He said, yeah. Why don't you try some? He said, all right, mate, give me a kilo. He said, hey, you cook them anyway, mate. He said, oh, I just like fish, in a frying pan. Anyway, Morton went away. About half an hour later, he come back. He said, excuse me, mate, you better give me a wheelbarrow full of those sausages, mate. He said, what? Wheelbarrow full? He said, you just bought a kilo of sausages. He said, yeah, I know. He said, but when I got them home, he said, by the time I skinned and gutted them, there was bugger all left. Morton one day, standing in the bar, and this big bloke walked up to him and said, I'm 6'6", 250 pounds, got 12 inches on the slack, 24 inches on the hard, and my name's Ben Brown. Well, with this, Morton's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. He fainted. So the bloke come over, threw the ice bucket over him. I was shaking him. Morton, wake up, you okay? He's looking around, he saw the bloke. He said, what did he say? The bloke said, I said I'm 6'6", 250 pounds. I got 12 inches on the slack, 24 inches on the hard, and my name's Ben Brown. I said, oh, crikey, I thought you said Ben Down. One day, this white fellow, and his family driving out in the countryside, and they thought they might have a barbecue, but they didn't have any meat, and they didn't remember they were going past this piggery, So they thought, why don't we go back there to that piggery and get a little piglet, suckling pig on the barbecue, you see. So we drove in the driveway, and you're not going to believe it, Morton was there. It was his piggery. He was on this Aboriginal business scheme, So the bloke walked up to him, Morton, he said, hey, mate, would you have a suckling pig there? He said, about 20 pounds, he said, just for the barbecue. He said, no worries, mate. So he's gone in there amongst the pigs, and he's going... He grabbed this little pig, you see, and he got him by the tail, and he put him between the teeth. He said, there you are, mate, 8.5 pounds. The bloke said, bullshit. He said, that you can't weigh a pig like that. He said, yeah, mate. He said, put him on the scales. Put him on the scales, 8.5 pounds. He said, geez, he said, that was an arsey guess, wasn't it? He said, no, arsey guess, mate, I do it all the time. He said, bull, I said, I bet you couldn't do it again. He said, all right, I'll show you, mate. What do you want? He said, about a 15-pound one? He said, you watch this, mate. And he grabbed a little piglet and he put the tail in his teeth. He said, there you are, mate, 15 pound, 2 ounces. Bloke said, bullshit, put him on the scale. They put him on the scale, 15 pound, 2 ounces. He said, that's an incredible trank you got there. He said, it's nothing much. Anybody can do it. So what do you mean? He said, my wife, she can do it. He said, bull dust. He said, yep, no worries. He said, I bet you that you can't. He said, all right, I bet you can, $200. He said, all right, you're on. He said to the kid, he said, quick, get up there. I said, go get your mum. He said, you got to go and win us $200. So kid's going up there. Come back 5 minutes later. He said, she's busy, Dad. She's busy. You're busy? He said, you get back up there and tell her to come down here straight away. So he's going up there, come back again. He said, Dad, he said, she's still busy. He said, busy? He said, what's keeping her so busy that she can't come down here and win us $200? He said, I'm not quite sure. He said, but I think she's trying to weigh the milkman. Yeah, I remember my wife Jetta and Gilligan one day, Morton's wife, sitting down having a cup of tea, and One day, Gilligan just said, oh, you know, that Morton, he just don't give me any money. You know, I never got any money to buy myself anything. Well, Jetty said, well, Billy used to be like that with me, but I taught him a lesson. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, one day when we went down to the shopping centre, I didn't wear no underpants, you know, and when I reached up to the top shelf to get something down, well, Billy noticed. He said, Christ, Jetty, you got no underpants on. And I just told him, I said, well, look, you know, by the time I fed your kangaroo dogs and paid your police fines, I got no money to go buy an underpants. So he said, here's $20, go buy yourself some underpants. Well, Gilligan said, I think I'll try that with the Morton. Sure enough, following weekend, going down the Kmart there, Gilligan reached up the top shelf. And Morton said, Christ, Gilligan, you got no underpants on. Yeah, I know. I said, well, by the time I, you know, feed your kangaroo dogs and pay your police fines and send the kids off to school, I got no money to buy underpants. He said, oh, well, here's 20 cents. Buy yourself a comb. At least you can look tidy. Yeah, I remember years ago when we was kids and we were in the back of a taxi going down High Street in Kalgoorlie, and Morton got his nose pressed up against the glass. You know, on the window there, looked like he had sunglasses on. He said, looking at these women standing there in the doorway in the negligees, you know, and he looking back around, he said to Mum, he said, hey, Mum, what are all those ladies doing there standing in their pajamas? He said, why, Morton, there's miners' wives. They're the women waiting for their husbands to come from the Mount Charlotte mine, you know, from night shift. Ah. Well, just a cab driver turned around and said, why didn't you tell the kid the truth? They're prostitutes. Oh, well. Morton said, hey, Mum, do the prostitutes have babies? She said, sure, son. Where do you think taxi drivers come from? Yeah, Morton, he come home one day and he's caught his next door neighbour, you know, messing about with Gilligan. He said, well, that's it. I'm going to fix this bloke up. So he grabbed him, dragged him down the back of into the garden shed, and he put his dick in the vice, you know. Then he got out this big long-bladed knife and he started sharpening up the knife and sharpening him up, and the bloke, the neighbour next door, looked at him and he said, oh, Morton, he said, you're not going to cut it off, are you? He said, no, you are. I'm setting a light to the shed. Yeah, I remember one day that me and Morton was walking across the Nullarbor Plain, you know, and walking along, and all of a sudden Morton said, hey, Billy, what's these little round things here lying on the ground, what? I said, why, that's what the white man calls a knowledge beans. He said, if you eat one of them, mate, you can end up smart like that Einstein fellow or that Prime Minister of Australia, mate. That's what you could end up. He said, really? I better have one straight away. So he reached down, picked one up, put it in his mouth. He said, he said, this tastes like rabbit shit. I said, there you are, you're learning already. Yeah, Dreamtime story here for you, mate. Long, long time ago in the Dreamtime, there was a fat crocodile and there was a skinny crocodile. And the skinny crocodile said to the fat crocodile, hey, how come you're so fat and I'm so skinny? Said, what do you mean? He said, well, we live in the same lagoon. He said, we come out of the same batch of eggs, yet you're fat and I'm skinny. How come? He said, it might be like this, mate. He said, right on dusk, he said, as the girls of the tribe come down there to get the water, he said, I slide off the bank, go underneath, and as the last one turns around, I sneak up, grab her by the ankle, drag her in under the water, mate, and gobble her all up. He said, so what? He said, you end up bloody rolling off a log, crashing across the top. He said, and by the time you get there, all you end up is with a mouthful of shit and a pair of songs. Yeah, there was a funny story I got to tell you about Morton and this Jew and this Australian, mate. They were drinking in the pub all together, and they're drinking and drinking, and finally they get that drunk, all three of them all go staggering out of the pub and got run over by a big cattle truck. Well, they all ended up to the pearly gates, you see, and about 10 minutes later, the Aussie, he's back. The Australian's back in the bar. The bloke said, well, crikey, we saw him run over 10 minutes ago. What's going on here? So they marched up around to this bloke and said, how come you're here? We just seen you killed 10 minutes ago. He said, well, when I got up to the pearly gates, he said, I done a deal with St. Peter. He said, what do you mean? He said, $10, mate. And he sent me back down here. I said, $10 to come back? He said, what happened to that other two? He said, well, the Jew's haggling about the price. He said, and the coon reckons that the government should pay. Yeah, I remember one day when Morton was hitchhiking, you know, and a bloke pulled up next to him and He said, yeah, Morton, I'll give you a lift. He said, but I said, your dog. He said, I can't bring your dog in the car. He said, it's all right, mate. He said, he's a good dog, that one. He said, you keep up, you'll run alongside. Bloke laughed, you know. I said, all right, get in. Anyway, I was driving along about 60 kilometres an hour, and he looked across over past Morton there, and sure enough, the dog is running along there with his tongue hanging out. I said, well, crikey, this dog can go, can't he? 60 kilometres. So I thought he put the foot down a bit more, you see. So next thing, he's doing 80 kilometres, and the dog's still there. So he thought, I'm going to get rid of this dog. So he put the foot right down. He's doing 120 kilometres. All of a sudden, he's looking across, the dog's still there. He thought, oh, I can't believe this. So then he put it right down, mate, and he'd wiped the car off the clock. He's doing about 160 k's. He looked across, and next thing, crash! He'd gone off a bend and into a tree. Anyway, he dragged Morton out of the car and everything else and dusted him off. And he said, Morton, he said, you okay? He said, yeah, mate, yeah, I'm okay. He said, where's your dog? He said, that's him over there, mate. He said, that's not your dog. He said, yeah, that's my dog. He said, your dog didn't have a red collar. He said, that ain't a collar, mate, that's his ass. He's never had to stop so quick. Yeah, I remember one day I was in some country hotel there, and Morton said to the publican, he said, hey, mate, where's the toilet? I said, oh, it's just out the back there, mate. You just go out the back door and down around the corner. Anyway, Morton went away. About half an hour later, I said to the publican, I said, what's the matter with that Morton? He's not back yet. He said, well, look, come with me, we'll go look for him. Sure enough, we go in there, and there is Morton in the dunny, mate, and there's shit everywhere, mate. Everywhere, on the light bulb, on the roof, everywhere. He said, Morton, what's with you? He said, salts, mate, salts. I've been taking the salts. He said, what, Eno? Epsom salts? He said, no, summer salts. Yeah, one day I was living in this old outback hotel, mate, and Morton said to the publican, he said, hey, mate, where's the toilet? He said, oh, just go out there on the veranda. He said, walk down a couple of doors, you'll see a hallway. Down the hallway, up the stairs. He said, along the veranda, and he said, it's up there in the corner. Anyway, Morton gone away for about 3/4 of an hour, and I said to the publican, I said, wonder where that Morton is? He said, yeah, I'm a bit worried too, let's go find him. So they're going up the veranda there, and through the door, and up the stairs, and finally, there's Morton sitting there. I said, Morton, what are you doing? He said, oh, Billy. He said, crazy toilet, this one, mate. Every time I got to get up, he said, it grabs me by the balls and pulls me back down again. I said, you silly bastard, you're sitting on the mop bucket. Yeah, I remember Morton saying to me the other day, he said, hey, Billy, he said, you know something? I had a dream the other day. I said, what's that? He said, I was dreaming that my mum gave me $10 and I went to Adventureland. I said, that's nothing, mate. I had a dream too, mate. I dreamt that I had 2 women, mate, a blonde and a redhead, mate, and I was having a good time with them, mate. I just couldn't handle them all. And Morton said, well, crikey, he said, why didn't you give me a call? I said, I did. He said, but Mum said you're going to Adventureland. Yeah, I remember Morton when he was going over to America and he was working in a grocery store there, you know. And anyway, he's only, you know, on a work exchange program. And what happened is American India is coming in, you know, and he's just standing there staring at all the toilet paper on the wall. Morton walked up to him, he said, what's your problem, mate? He said, I'm confused. I said, what do you mean you're confused? He said, well, he said, you got one that's soft and you got double strength and all the different labels. I don't know which one to grab, mate. He said, well, that's no problem, mate. He said, why don't you grab the health brand? It's got no name, mate, but it's cheaper. He said, all right, I'll buy it. So anyway, a couple of days later, the Indian is back in the shop there and he's standing in front of the toilet paper again. He said, what's the matter now, mate? He said, I got a name for the no-name toilet paper. He said, what's that? He said, me call him John Wayne. He said, John Wayne? He said, yeah. He said, how come? Because he's rough, he's tough, and he don't take shit off Indians, mate.